All right. So morning, afternoon, evening, everyone. Again, this is Brendan Vanis. I'm the developer rep, tech rep, you might say, for PlayFab. Here with me I have Zach Bragg. He's from our SDK and tools team. And he's going to be presenting to you on using stats and leaderboards in Unity in our service. So take it away, Zach.
All right. Thanks, Brendan. And hello, everyone. I'm excited to be here to talk about stats, statistics, and leaderboards and how you can use them quickly and easily to come up with several creative systems for your game. So with that, we'll dive into some preliminary details and then we'll get into it. So a brief intro to who PlayFab is. If you're tuning in for the first time, we are a small startup company who builds backends as a service. We like to think of it as a live games operations platform, and we offer 240 RESTful API calls. And these calls help you manage various aspects of your game, from authentication to virtual currency management, game data storage, analytics, and more. Today we're going to be talking about game data storage, and this is a little bit of a part two from what we presented last week, where we focused specifically on player data, where this week we're going to focus on statistics and leaderboards aspect of game data. And also additional information here are on the screen, our main site, our community site, where you can access your title and all of the tools, as well as all of our documentation. And also, before we continue, I just wanted to point out that you can sign up for a free PlayFab account if you don't already have one. It's completely free to get in, and you can follow along with this tutorial or just poke around and explore on your own. But before you begin this tutorial, you'll need to set up a title in the game manager and be comfortable using Postman. And we have a simple guide that shows you how to download and set up Postman to be compatible with all of our API calls. All of the latest signatures and updates are all included there in that link. And with that, you can follow along and access all of the API calls as I do it in this tutorial. All right, so visually speaking, I'm going to explain what statistics and leaderboards are. So for our demonstration purposes, we created a title called Unicorn Battle. And this is I'm going to just kind of review the terms a little bit as I go through. We consider the game that you're making the title, and then within the title you have players, and those players can be characters, you know, like a class, and one player has multiple characters, or they could just be one player has one account and everything is tied under that account. So we support those two configurations. And as each player is playing, they are triggering events, things are happening in your game, and those events trigger stats. And those stats could be arbitrary things that happen in your game. And in this case, I've got boss kills, encounters, items found, gold found, items used, quests failed, deaths, etc. So that's just kind of an overview of some stuff that you could use. These are examples that we use in the Unicorn Battle. And these stats are put into, or called from the server API and stored into the PlayFab backend. And then at a later point in time, you can retrieve these stats in the form of a leaderboard, which shows you the rank of the players in that stat category. So here I'm showing boss kills, but all of those stats that are listed there in the callouts, items found, encounters, XP, etc., all have their own leaderboard. So you can see who's found the most gold, who's died the most times, who's found the most items, whatever you're tracking. You can quickly pull up a all-up list to see where your players rank in that particular category. Moving on to the more detailed breakdown of what statistics and leaderboards are. So in language rather than pictures, I like to say that they are player-centric key value storage, where the key value is a string and integer combination. This is important, and I'll enumerate over that here for a moment. So some other things that player statistics can do is they can be set by the client, or they can be restricted only to the servers. They're a great concept, or a great tool for tracking simple stats as players go through your game. These stats can be used to drive basically 3 different kinds of leaderboard calls. Get the top X amount of records, get X amount of records around the current user, or get a list of your friends list and what their records are for that particular stat category. This system allows you to compare players or characters and have a breakdown for the appropriate levels. And then these stats are public and can be retrieved for individual players, perhaps on your friends list or perhaps not. And then now I'm going to talk a little bit about what stats and leaderboards are not. And these are some of the limitations around what this particular system can and can't do. Definitely let us know if you have ideas or want to do something more complex, and talk to you with options on how we can make that possible. So these stats are not unlimited, meaning you have a character, you have a player, they can only have a finite amount of keys or statistics attached to that account. So we have a soft limit of 256 keys per player or character. And again, if this is too low of a limit to you, definitely come and let us know. It's the forums or the developer relations alias. We'll be happy to work with you on other options or look into your scenario to see what makes the most sense for your title. These stats are not aggregatable. And what I mean by that is we cannot create compound or complex leaderboards where you're taking a player account and comparing their stats, their kills, their deaths, doing some complex kill-to-death ratio, some other combined stats all together like in a tabular form. That's very difficult to do with this particular system and not something we would recommend planning to do around this stats and leaderboards concept. Additionally, stats must be of type integer or number if you're using the other JavaScript type libraries, which means no strings, no floats, and basically just have simple integers. And these are not easily compared outside of the leaderboards call or get statistics call. So their ability to give you a big list is a little bit limited. And what I mean by that is you can't get all the records for a given statistic. It makes it difficult to do things like outside the leaderboard APIs, and it also makes sorting an entire list of category statistics kind of impossible. Like you can't do, give me the bottom 15 users. You don't really know how many users are in a list, so you can't ask for that range. But if for some reason you did know that, you can query specifically for a range of values. And we'll get more into what I mean by that in the next couple of slides. All right, now some basic use case scenarios as well as some advanced use case scenarios. So for the basic ones, we have this system easily tracks player and character progress. You can quickly get subsections of stat entries, whether you want the top 10, the closest to me, or just my friends, as well as restricting clients from updating stats. And that is more of a hacking prevention or client, not trusting the client type of behavior. So we have options for you to allow the client to update the stats. However, if you're going to use these stats for any actual gameplay, if you want to keep the integrity of the gameplay, you're definitely going to want to restrict the clients from updating stats and allow the server APIs to make that call. And that could be done from your own dedicated server or from CloudScript. And we're going to take a look at the CloudScript portion of that in the upcoming slides. All right, those are the basic scenarios. That's a good, those are good practice ones if you wanted to get familiar with the system to build out simple player and character stats tracking, as well as maybe a simple leaderboard to display them in your particular game engine and presentation. Now for the advanced statistics, these are just some ideas that I had, and a lot of these are implemented in our unicorn battle, so I can talk to you about how we put it together and some concerns that it may have scaling up for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of levels. Obviously we have a limit on the stats, so you can use the string tokens for additional categories, and that's kind of like putting a signifier on the front of it or back of the stat that you can filter out a particular stat for that stat category. And that's a little bit hard to see here, but again, I'll have examples of these things in the upcoming slides. We have using characters and users for aggregated stats. So this is using the character system as well as the user system to do a combined stat. So the characters are creating their and tracking their own stats. One user has multiple characters, and at the user level, we're aggregating all of the character stats up under the user profile. So that gives you the ability to see and slice your data at multiple levels. It can be kind of interesting, as we'll see coming up. We can also drive an achievement system with these statistics. It's not a full-blown Valve achievement system that you may see in Team Fortress 2, but you can get pretty interesting gameplay and effectiveness out of it. As well as you can drive and track a progress, or drive and track the progress of a contest. This would be, an example of this would be your game launches, and you have a stat category that you're tracking in the game, and you're going to make this contest start on a particular day and end on a particular day, and when that contest ends, you're going to look at the top X amount of people, and those players get an in-game award for being the victors of the contest. And the leaderboard works pretty well for tracking these types of contests. However, if you're going to do something like that, again, I would like to reiterate, pay attention to how easy or difficult it is to spoof, hack your content for the contest. Obviously, people like to do that type of thing, and if you're tying in-game rewards or monetary rewards, some type of perceived value to this contest, the odds of the people wanting to hack your game, your client, and your contests all go up. And lastly, have some logic in place to mitigate stat hacking and cheating. Basically, what we just talked about there. All right. So a basic code sample for retrieving your stats, and this can be done from the client, the server, or the admin API set, is making a request using our API, our data models in there for get statistics request. Once you have that request, you can run get user statistics, and after that successfully runs, you will want a callback in place where it can grab the data, the statistics dictionary when it comes back, iterate through that dictionary and update or cache your values in your client. Pretty simple system. For updating, it's really exactly the same way. You can do it directly from the client if you've enabled that, or you can run it through CloudScript or a dedicated server. So here in the top right, I'm showing the different options. These options are configured in the PlayFab Game Manager for your title. And here I'm showing where we can allow players to post statistics. And obviously, de-checking that box and updating the data will restrict clients from making that call. And we'll see an example of that shortly. But the two code examples I have on the screen here are for running in CloudScript, and this is triggered by the client and then updates the stat values for the characters that are being played. So on the right-hand side, I've got get character statistics. That is going through a list of all of my characters, extracting their statistics and putting that into a complex object and returning that object to the client. And then when it comes time to update the character statistics, here I've got a simplistic way of updating the statistics, but I would also point out that this is where you would do things like validate that stat values are in reasonable ranges, that have taken place in reasonable amounts of time, and this is directly in response to preventing and limiting cheating. So additionally, you may want to run things after your stats update or in this same update call where you would evaluate offers or achievements. And this would be if the achievement or if the stat value has passed the achievement threshold, you're going to want to award that achievement to the user, and perhaps that also triggers them to be eligible for an offer, which they can use to get extra items in your store, get level up points, action points, whatever you want to tie that into. This is a good way to manage this in a more secure fashion and also get fairly complex game systems out of a very easy to use API call. All right. moving on. So this is a screenshot on the left from our Unicorn Battle game where we've got a simplistic leaderboard. It's kind of sad I don't have any friends on there, but maybe I will get some time to add those in the upcoming days. But basically we've got a top 10 leaderboard on the left, a friends leaderboard on the right, and this is for the stat category of total gold found. So in this case, you can see where I rank in this position. My account name is UniZach, and there's all of the people around me. And I will point out what you see down in positions 8, 9, and 10. That is, there are ties on those numbers. So the value is there, but we don't actually have the individuals who scored that value because there's multiple for those values. And this is currently the way the system is operating. However, I'll say we are investigating what the best way to handle this is moving forward. So let us know how you prefer to deal with ties. Like there's some standard ways out there. Anyway, yeah, so moving into the statistics and how I write them, how do they get named? Obviously, in the screenshot on the right here, we're looking at total underscore gold found, and this total underscore is a token that I put onto the stat category. And over here on the right, I'm showing some of my JSON data for my level. And this level is just one of the things that people do in Unicorn Battle. They run through the levels, kill the enemies, and throughout that process, many things are getting tracked. This data builds out the level and the encounters that you see in that level. But for each level, I have a stats prefix. And this shows that all stats that are tracked for the cave will have the cave prefix. So there is an equivalent cave gold found. So you can see how much gold you found at each level, as well as how much gold your player has found in total across all characters for that user. Pretty neat to be able to do that, and very easy to keep them all in sync. All right, going on to one of the more advanced systems. Here we have the achievement system. So last week I talked about achievements and then player data. So I was storing this data in the left in player data, or I'm sorry, title data. This data is stored at the title level, accessible to all clients, and each client will pull down this data, and this data is used to compare against the player statistics. And if the player statistics is greater than the threshold here, this achievement will be awarded, and the achievement details are here for display purposes. And then in the game, this is the character select screen, so we can see my character, Agent XXX, and its achievements here on the right. And those achievements, none of those have been met yet, so you can see the fill bars to see what the progress is relative to the threshold. And then after those achievements are met, the actual achievement will be awarded once on the next stat update. And that was basically what I was talking about in the previous slide, where we were updating CloudScript, and there's an area for evaluating offers and achievements. All right, so that's all I have for the slide deck. Now I'm going to switch over to my Postman client and the game manager to show off a little bit of where these things are in relation to other areas of PlayFab and things that you might also be familiar with. So here we're looking at the main dashboard game manager for Unicorn Battle, and I'm under the Players tab, and then within the Players tab, I'm under Player Statistics. So here we see the all totaled up player statistics for Zach01. You can see bosses killed, damage done, experience gained, etc. And some of these are totaled, and some of these are just the highest character level. And the highest character level operates a little bit differently in that that is the highest character level that you've ever gotten. So when a character levels up, it checks that level, and if your newest character level up is greater than this one, it will update that, so you can always kind of track who's gotten the highest character, who's gotten a character to the highest level. So these are the aggregated statistics, and over under the characters tab, I will show, here's character agent XXX, and this is his inventory. And one of the limitations currently in the game manager is there's not a place to see the character statistics. So I'm going to pull that up in Postman to show how they look from the JSON and API level. And then lastly, the enable, disable API features. This is where I talked about you can allow clients to post statistics, or you can prohibit them from being able to post that from the client. So this is found under settings, the general tab, and that's where you can check that and then update to allow clients to post statistics. So we just enabled that, and we will see the implementations of that over in Postman. So here's my Postman collection. And again, if you're not familiar with Postman, definitely check out our guide. It was linked earlier in the presentation. And the first thing I'm going to do is say, what are my total bosses killed leaderboards? So I want to look at the leaderboard, and that's basically what you saw in the Unicorn Battle screenshot. So here are the leaderboards and the statistics, the display name, the rank, the position, and the value. And those will come back for all of your statistics. So let's take a look at the get user statistics for my account Zach01. I'm already logged in and have an active session, so I can go ahead and execute this call, get user statistics. Once get user statistics comes back, we see basically a dictionary, a JSON dictionary of the string on the left and then the integer number value on the right. And these are all the statistics that you saw here at the game manager level. And now I'm going to show trying to update these statistics. So we've allowed the users to update our statistics. So here we've got, well, let me bounce back one. So we've got total bosses killed 18, but now I'm going to update that to, let's say, 64. So I'm going to send that request off, and we get the success response. Then we know that this has been updated. So let's bounce back over and get our statistics. Sending off our statistics, and sure enough, our total bosses killed is now 64. That's basically how you update one statistic at a time. However, I will say that this is an object here, and if you wanted to update multiple stats at a time, that's great to do it that way. It's a lot better to update all of your statistics in a batch update than hundreds of individual stat updates every time that happens. So that's one thing to consider when you're building your game. In particular for Unicorn Battle, since we have the concept of levels, we actually don't update the statistic until we've verified that the level has been completed and the values are in reasonable ranges, and then we update all of those levels at once. And this helps with offline issues. You're not having to worry about syncs and desyncs in the middle of a level. The client can track all of that information and then send it up all at once, and we're not really tying anything monetary into this system. It's really just for demo purposes, so we do a light validation and apply those statistics in a batch update, and that's once per level rather than many times or dozens of times, which you could do, but it's definitely not a recommended practice and is not very efficient. All right, so that gives us the update and pull down for the statistics and leaderboards. Now I'm going to go back over to Game Manager, disable this just to show that once we disable this and submit our change, we can now no longer update our user statistics from the client API. So here, this is showing that we're in the client update user statistics, and then we get the code 400, bad request, API is not enabled for client access. So that just shows you what to expect. If you see that and you're not expecting that, then you know it's definitely tied into this checkbox on your game manager. So whatever you decide to go with, that's where you can set it, and that's what to expect when you cannot update from client. So how do we get around this? I mentioned earlier that we run CloudScript from Unicorn Battle, and CloudScript has access to the server API set. And server API set also has an update user statistics. So here we have to provide an additional ID, my player ID, but that's simple enough. That CloudScript always knows who the calling user is and can be accessed directly in the cloud script code. Once you know who the user is, updating the statistics is exactly the same way. Here we're going to update the total bosses killed to 128, and that goes through successfully. The server has the access to the developer secret key, and that gives it, the authority to update this field. So now if we go back over to get user statistics, we can make another query and see that our total bosses killed is now 128. All right, and then lastly, I'll touch on the get characters. So this whole time we've been talking at the total level, at the user level, but we also have the ability to have a character system in PlayFab, and those characters have the ability to have their own stats, leaderboards, player data, inventories, etc. So here we're looking at the bosses killed statistic for characters, and this is the character leaderboard. So I did a bosses killed. Give me the top 20 and start with position 1. Those are my parameters. Execute that query or the request, and then this is what you get back, a JSON array of these stat leaderboard objects. And here you see the character ID, the player ID, the character name, its display name, the character type, which is pretty interesting because if you are using the character system, your characters have a character type, and you can filter your leaderboard on character type as well. So I could say show me all of the character types Bucephalo and compare those amongst each other rather than all the characters compared together. And then lastly, I'll just show getting character statistics for my character. So my character, Agent XXX, is going to have all kinds of character stats, and here is a good example of what I was mentioning earlier of tokens on your stats. So really, the only stats that we're tracking is how many times have you complete a level, a particular level, how much damage was done, how many deaths were incurred, how many encounters were completed, how much gold was found, how much items found, items used, unicorns rescued, and experience gained. That is tracked for each level. So in the Badlands level, we haven't completed it 0 times, but apparently we did 500 damage. We didn't die any, and we completed 1 encounter and found almost 1,000 gold. And then you can see for bosses killed, that one is not tokenized, so we're tracking just bosses killed total for this character, and then at the higher level player, we're tracking bosses killed across all characters. Here's cave complete. So this is the cave level, the forest level, the mire level, and the patch complete level. So, and then total again, that one's not tokenized. We're tracking how many quests were completed totally for this particular character. And then this is the area where I'll mention you can have 256 of these ID or key value pairs. And so if you're going to have dozens and dozens and dozens of levels, this might not be the best way to track the statistics across those levels. We can talk some offline on any particular use case or questions that you may have. Definitely submit them to the chat box, and for this webinar we can address any concerns you have on limitations or how to build certain systems or whatever interests you or whatever you have questions on. Let us know. We'll be happy to get the answer you need. And I believe that wraps us up as far as the demonstration goes. That's in a nutshell, the character abilities, stats, and stats and leaderboard API calls. I'm just going to briefly show api.playfab.com. And this is our documentation page, so I'm just going to pull up the API reference. Here we've got client and server APIs, and you can pull up and expand all of the APIs in our service. And then I'm going to search on characters, so you can see the character inventory, character data here, where you can get all the user's characters, get a character leaderboard, get character leaderboard around a character, get a leaderboard for user characters, grant characters to user. All of these things will be used in conjunction with each other to make a successful character system, as well as tracking stats and character leaderboard. Additionally, we have the leaderboard for users, and friends. So you can get friend leaderboards, you can get leaderboards around a current user, just like leaderboard around a current character, get an all-up leaderboard, and then get a leaderboard around your current position. And that wraps up all of the leaderboard calls. You saw the update statistics, get statistics, and using those in the right context for your game will give you a successful and solid leaderboard system. So I will turn it back over to Brendan to see if we have any questions, and we'll dive into it.
Alrighty. So thanks, Zach. Obviously, the first question is on folks' minds is about the limits, just asking about clarification on that. So we have posted limits now. If you go to playfab.com/limits, you'll find that we posted them there. The limits, as stated on that page, are to a certain extent flexible. The design of them is to ensure that there's no slowdowns to responses or disruptions of any kind to the service based upon the database model that's in use and how titles are using it across the entire service. So again, if you have specific needs that go beyond what we're listing for the limits, please do let us know. We can work with you either to help you with the architecture of the design of the usage or to increase limits where necessary. In addition, I want to point out that while the initial limit on statistics is 256, if you were to be querying your 256 stats all at once, over and over again, you might experience some slowdowns. We are going to add a limitation of requesting up to only 100 limits at a time. Obviously, currently, that's not an option since the APIs in question don't give you a way to enter the keys for the stats when you're requesting them, but we'll be adding that shortly as an optional parameter. And
additionally, we also are excited about one of our new features coming online very, very soon, probably in the next week, and that is resettable leaderboards. So you saw the statistics and leaderboards, and these are tracked individually for players. So if a player is playing your game, they may or may not have the statistics. Everyone does not necessarily have the same statistics. So if they have not played the same level in Unicorn Battle, they would not have the same statistics. So the cave would be accessible to predict maybe one character but not the other, which this kind of system makes it very difficult to basically blanket reset a particular statistic. So if you're thinking about hosting a contest or some kind of time-bound activity where you're tracking those statistics, and at the end of that time-bound you need to reset and start again. So you're doing maybe a weekly challenge, daily challenge, monthly challenge, something like that. We will be in the near future offering ability to reset a particular stat value so that everyone owning that stat value gets brought back down to 0.
That's right. We'll actually be posting a tutorial about that shortly, and we'll post a blog link so that everyone has access to it. But yes, you'll have the ability to make statistics which are resettable on a daily, hourly, weekly, or monthly basis, and you'll also have a way to manually trigger a reset to a statistic if you need to. So if you're running a particular contest and you're working closely with your community, you'll be able to do it manually rather than have it set to do it automatically. And when the statistics are reset, by the way, we'll also be taking the statistics snapshot as it existed at the moment of the reset and putting that in S3 for you as a report so that you can then use that if you are doing rewards to your players based upon positions in the leaderboards or badges or anything else. Okay, we don't have any other questions at the moment, so I did want to just also call out one other thing. As the sharp-eyed among you may have noticed, there was a pretty significant update to our site today. There's also, if you go to Develop Online, a news article about the change that's coming for PlayFab. So just as a very brief statement about it, we are making the core services of PlayFab free. That does mean that authentication, data systems, statistics, leaderboards, obviously, and cloud script and the like, all of those core services of PlayFab are going entirely free. And there is now a marketplace of integrated partners, which we'll be expanding on quite rapidly in the near future. The idea is that we will pre-integrate partners into our service as much as possible so that we minimize the amount of work that you as a developer have to do to integrate those services on your side. In some cases, we'll be entirely eliminating the need for you to integrate another SDK because it'll all be just server-to-server operations on our side. Please do have a look at the site, have a look at our new info, and if you have any questions about it, feel free to let us know. You can post to our forums at community.playfab.com or email us at devrel@playfab.com. That's DEVREL. And with that, there aren't any other questions.
All right, well, thank you all for tuning in, and hopefully this was useful, and I expect to see some awesome leaderboards out there.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Appreciate your time today.